We did quite a few really long-term features with this last release. We completely revamped the user interface and added responsive workflow. Those two there were a big chunk of our team for multiple quarters, and so those both released in May. We have the engineers, the tech leads on those features. We're going to kind of walk you through it, what we've done. And also we did a lot of improvements around text and did some things with the code editor as well, and the engineers involved with those features will also be demoing what they've done. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm also going to demo, this is kind of a small feature, but I'm really excited about it. I've wanted this since we first started producing the tool. Let me just go to view the entire screen. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new document. All right, so this is going to be really short and sweet, this first part here. I'm just going to basically show you what we've done with components. So I'm going to bring out, let's say, swipeable gallery. Now today, or previously anyway, whenever you drag a component to stage, you just always get a gray box. What we've done is we've made it to where components can actually render at author time. So when you're designing, you actually see what the content's going to look like. Whether that's the first frame on a swipeable gallery or a Google map, a YouTube video, all these things will give you sort of a preview of the first frame when you're putting them on stage. It's kind of a small enhancement, but you can imagine down the road if we have drop-down boxes and radial buttons and things like that, it'd be really nice if they can actually render on stage if you're maybe, say, making a quiz component ad or something. So let me just do a quick import here. I think somewhere here I had a baby picture. Here we go. Oops. All right, so bring that in. I'm going to go to Properties. And we'll all right, so I mean, obviously I was doing like 5 or 6 different images on a carousel, but I'll just do the first one to give you an idea. So now there's a cute baby picture instead of a gray square. I think that's a decent improvement. You can imagine your own content in there and how that might play out. So that's a small enhancement. Just want to show that off. And so now I'm going to turn this over to Heather Douglas, who is the tech lead who basically transformed the entire Google Web Designer app into something that looks modern and based on material design. Go ahead, Heather.
Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our new UI. As you can see, it's totally different. It's been updated. So the new UI was inspired by material design, and one of the big changes you've probably seen if you've used the new release is that we've moved the design view and code view buttons and preview and publish from the bottom of the stage up into the top right corner, but you still have the same options. You can switch between code view and design view. You can see that we've updated all the panels, including the timeline. One of the nice new things in the timeline is it will show you the element that is selected, so it's a little bit easier to tell. There we go. Then the big update is this panel over on the right-hand side. It was totally reworked so that now you can rearrange panels the way you want. Move that down. You can also group panels in tabs, so it has them more readily available with what you're working on. And so all the panels got style updates. You can see that the color panel is pretty different from what it used to look like. And the properties panel was also totally rewritten, and one of the differences you'll see is that now when you're viewing custom components, the advanced properties are now part of the panel. They're just in their own little hide show section. And then one other useful thing is if you want to expand a panel so that it takes the full content or the full height that's available, you can double click and it will expand to fill the whole area. So that's just a very quick high-level overview of the new UI changes. I'm sure you'll spend some time checking them out. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lucas to talk about responsive.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the new support we added in Web Designer for creating responsive content using media rules. We have a fairly extensive set of tutorials up on our YouTube channel, and I'm not going to be able to go through every last detail during this demo just due to time constraints, but I'm going to give you a fairly comprehensive walkthrough of what it is. But for more information, please do check out those tutorials. So I'm going to start here by creating a new file. And I'm going to just check this box here saying responsive layout. Now, all that box did was initialize the page's width and height to 100%, which you can also accomplish by pressing this button in the property inspector. So if you didn't press that button in the new file dialog, it's no problem. You can get the same effect just here in the PI. We have a new tool that I'll talk about a bit later that lets you resize the viewport interactively at author time. Now, we have no content, so all you see is the background of the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a document that has a vertical layout when it's narrower and a horizontal layout when it's wider. So let me just start by adding some content. So first I'll drag in an image, and then I'll add a text box. Okay, I'll maybe center the text, make it a little bit bigger. I'll tune the size of that box to more exactly fit the text. Okay, great. So my goal here is to have it, the content be centered horizontally and evenly spaced vertically. And I want to leave some margins at the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to add a couple of small spacer elements here to make that a little easier. So there's one. Another, just roughly put them on the screen. Now I'm going to use the existing fluid layout features we have. So I'm going to check these two boxes up here, select everything. Now I'm going to center it horizontally and evenly space it vertically. And now if we preview the document, we can see that the layout's preserved. So except for being able to resize the viewport, this is stuff that you could already do in the current release. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that, well, when the viewport is a little bit wider, I'm going to switch from this horizontal layout to a vertical layout. And to do that, I'm going to use this new panel we have for working with media rules. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a breakpoint on width. Now let's look at what just happened. So I set a breakpoint. You can see in the rulers now, there are these two colored bars that indicate two different ranges of widths. I have one media rule that covers all widths below the breakpoint, and one media rule for all widths above the breakpoint. And that's depicted here in this panel. The highlighted color of this bar indicates that I'm now editing the media rule that covers the range of viewports with a larger width. So now I'm going to apply my new layout. I'm just going to roughly get everything in the right spot. I'm going to select it all. This time I'm going to center it vertically and evenly space it horizontally. And that's it. Now, if I have a wider viewport, it has a horizontal layout. If I have a narrow viewport, it has a vertical layout. And I can easily tune the point at which this transition occurs just by moving this marker here in the ruler. There we go. So a lot's happened here. And before I go further with the demo, I want to just talk a bit about what's happened. So first of all, if we go to code view, we can see what we've just done. Let me make the text a little bit bigger maybe so it's easier to read. So as I said, we created two media rules. One media rule is empty. We didn't have any override styles. And the upper media rule contains some new values, new styles for left, top, and transform that affect this horizontal layout. Back inside design view, if you select an element and you look in the property inspector, any property that's overridden in the current media rule is highlighted. And you can remove the override by accessing this pop-up. If you look at the CSS panel, you can also see there the contents of the rule you're currently editing. You can also see the CSS rule that's being overridden in the current media rule. So as I resize the viewport, the media rule automatically updates, the active media rule, to correspond to the size of the viewport. And you can see in the ruler, the highlighting switches from this orange interval here for the upper rule to the magenta interval for the lower rule. And there's lots of ways to resize the viewport. One is you can click directly on the ruler. You can use this new viewport resizing tool with these handles that I've been showing. You can directly enter a viewport size in these text boxes in the upper left. And you can also use a menu of presets to select common add or device sizes. And you can even create your own custom sizes by just sizing the viewport and then hitting this button to add a new custom preset. So when you work with media rules, there are two modes that you operate in. One is when you're editing what we call the base document, the master content. And this is just all the stuff that's not inside the media rules. And the other mode is when you're actually editing the media rules. And when you're in this mode, all you do is edit styles. So if I switch back here, I can switch between these two modes in the responsive panel. So here's the master document that I'm switching back to now. We see that my override styling has disappeared. I just have my original vertical layout. The UI looks exactly like before, no colored bars on top. When I switch to media rules, this is now the responsive workflow. I see these colored bars in the rulers. And also, when you're in the media rule editing mode, every edit that you make in Web Designer ultimately translates to some sort of CSS style that is in a rule. And for that reason, there's some bits of editing functionality that we turn off. For example, you can't use the tag tool because if you created a tag, that would just edit the DOM. It wouldn't be limited to the media rule. But nonetheless, there's a lot that you can do while editing media rules. And that includes editing position, size, opacity, color, visibility, and even add animations. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. OK, so let me just, having said all that, let me just extend this example a bit to contain more variations as we alter the size. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say that when the viewport is even wider, I'm going to have a second image appear in this ad. So because I'm editing the DOM, I have to switch back to the master rules, so I can now add elements to the DOM. I'm going to go back to the library. I'm going to add an image. I'm just going to put it off to the side and make it invisible to start by setting its visibility to be hidden, because I don't want it to appear by default. OK. Now I'm going to go back to the media rules, and this time I'm going to add a new breakpoint. And I'll do it this time by right-clicking in the ruler. So you can see now there's this new purple interval that indicates that I'm editing this new media rule for widths that are above around 750. And now I'm going to take that second image, I'm going to place it here, I'm going to set it to be visible, and I'm going to reestablish my layout by centering everything vertically and spacing it out horizontally. And so now what we see is that when the viewport is very wide, I have two images. When it's narrower, I have one image. And when it's even narrower, I have a vertical layout. So far all we've done is set breakpoints on width, but you can also set them on height. And I'll show an example of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say when the document has a horizontal layout, but it's sufficiently tall, I'm going to add a footer image. So once again, because I'm adding new content, I go back to editing the master content. Here's that new footer image I'm going to add. I'm going to make it be hidden by default. Now I'm going to switch back to editing media rules. This time, I'm going to add a height breakpoint. And now you notice that the vertical ruler contains these colored bars just as the horizontal ruler did. And so what I've done is I've effectively created a grid of media rules where the breakpoints give you the height and width boundaries of the cells in this grid. So you can see exactly what you're doing as you resize the viewport. The colored bars on the left or the top indicate the width and height ranges of the media rule you're currently editing. So right now I'm in the biggest media rule, and now I'm in the middle width interval. Now I'm in a shorter width interval. Now I'm in the shorter range of heights, still in the shorter range of heights, but middle width and higher width. So you can always see where you are, but it's looking at which of those colored bars are lit up in the rulers. So now in the largest media rule, I'm going to add that footer. So I'm going to drag this element in. I'm going to make it be visible. I'm going to stick it on the bottom and center it horizontally. And now, as I resize the viewport, it behaves as expected. When you edit media rules, you're only ever editing the active media rule. So if I switch now to this middle range of widths, I'm back to my original styling. But that's no problem. I can just reproduce the same effect if I would like to have it. And that's what I'm going to do in this case. So make it be visible, stick it on the bottom, center it horizontally. And now we're done. When we have a horizontal layout and we're very tall, we have a footer. When it's shorter, the footer disappears. And for the narrow range of viewports, we always have this vertical layout. So there are a couple more things I'm not going to go over right now, but they're in the YouTube tutorials. I'll just briefly mention them. One is that you can create also separate sets of breakpoints for portrait versus landscape viewports. So if you want to have something targeted to mobile phone in landscape versus portrait mode, but you don't want to be too tied to the size of the phone, you want to have it responsive within those limits, then you can do that in the responsive panel. Also, we fully support animated content. Any animation that you create in Web Designer can be inside of a media rule. This is possible because we use CSS3 keyframes to create animations. This means that you can have animations that only exist in a media rule, or animations in media rules that override animations that affect the base document. So, having said all that, I'm going to turn things over. Oh, actually, no, one more thing I want to show you. I almost forgot. So this has been kind of a contrived example, sort of like I call it programmer art. It's not something you'd see in the real world. But I want to show you something that was made by somebody that better knows what they're doing. So I'm going to navigate here on disk. OK, so this looks more like a real advertisement. I'm going to switch to the media rules. What we have here is an ad that contains, let's see, 5 horizontal breakpoints and 3 vertical breakpoints. And it covers a fairly extensive range of sizes. So I'm just going to resize the viewport a bit here so you can get a sense of the range of variation that's spanned by this creative. Now, the thing to pay attention to is this part that's inside those gray boundaries. You'll see that the background image extends beyond those bounds in many cases. So as we resize it, we add and remove elements, we change font sizes, and we change alignments. The striking thing, I think, about this document is that if you look at it in code view, you'll see that there are actually only 4 elements in the DOM. There are 2 images and 2 text blocks. Now, so this is effectively 15 documents in one. And as a result, it's definitely more complicated than if you had just a single document. But the complexity is greatly reduced than if you actually had 15 separate documents. And just to highlight that, so what we have here is a media rule that governs the largest range of sizes, the largest width and largest heights. And you see it has a few rules that affect the visibility and the positioning of elements. Now, just adding those, 20 lines of CSS is the alternative to creating an entirely separate file and having to sync up assets every time you change files of different sizes. But now, with this workflow, everything is just in a single document. And having said that, I'm now going to truly turn it over to Jean-Pierre, who will talk about improvements to our text.
Hi everybody, this is Jean-Pierre, and I'm going to talk about some of the ways we can modify the appearance of text in GWD, and including some of the new ways we added recently. So, I'm going to create a new document. And create a text. You can modify the font of the existing text with the font drop-down by either clicking on an existing font or adding a Google font, with the advantage that it's going to look the same on all platforms automatically. In this drop-down, you can have a preview with the picked font, what it would look like when you pick one of the different weight or style possibilities. Going to pick italic, make it bigger, and change the color. Now this is what I'm currently seeing in the toolbar up there. If I create a new element, it's going to look like that existing selection. If I change the color, for example, and create a new element, then a new element will look like one selection. If I go back to the previous one and create yet a new element, that's going to be a copy of the styles for the previous selection. If I have no selection, then I go back to the default for this kind of text, and creating a text will show me again what these defaults are. One mechanism that allows to reuse text easily is by copying the text style from any existing text and applying them to a different element. This allows quickly to spread out changes throughout the document. It also works in across documents. So if I go back to Lucas's document, I can see that I can apply and see the new styles directly applied there. Some new mechanism we added allows to preview what the defaults are for the different kind of styles that a user might want to take advantage of. The people familiar with Google Docs will recognize a similar mechanism. If I create a new document and say I want to create an H1, it will automatically look like the preview. So the preview is using the font size, the font family, the style, weight, and some additional properties to preview what it's going to look like. The color is previewed in this circle. And when I create it, I'm showing something. I'm showing something that looks like what I had in my drop-down. Now it's not that interesting unless I can actually change the default. So if I go there and I select text, I can say this is now the new default for heading ones. And automatically all the headings I have throughout my document, including other pages, will reflect the new changes. I can also decide to apply the existing default to an existing document, to an existing text. For example, by selecting this one and saying, I want to apply what are the current defaults, and then it will go back to these defaults. It's something that can easily be used in a new document. If you go to code view, you can see this style sheet corresponding to the defaults that have been set for the different types of the text. And by copy pasting this in a new document, you will automatically inherit these defaults. And I'm now going to pass presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to show you some features we have added to the code editor in Google Web Designer in this release. So I'm going to switch to code view here. So in the code view, you'll notice a new menu option here, settings. When I click on settings, there are two options. One is the theme. And as you can see, we now have support for a bunch of different themes. We had some support in the previous release. Now we have expanded significantly on that. And I'm going to click on, say, Eclipse here. So, and I'll show you a few more. Or I can say Cobalt. This is more of a blue background. Right? So as you can see, there are a bunch of themes that tend to be on the brighter side, and there are a bunch of themes that tend to be on the darker side. Hopefully, this should suit the needs of all our users. And once you make a preference, GWD will remember your preference and apply it to all the different documents that you open. And the next one I want to show you is the key map. So these are kind of different editing modes. And as you can see here, other than the default, we have support for Emacs, Sublime, and Vim. So again, this was one of the features requested by our users, and depending on what editor you're used to, I think you'll find it very useful. So I can show you, so for instance, if you pick Sublime and you're used to Sublime keyboard shortcuts, I'm just pressing Control L here to select more and more lines. So in a different editing mode, it would work differently. And then Control X would cut the selected text, and I'm just doing Control Z to undo what I did. So these are the two useful features we have added in this release. We are doing more and more improvements to code editor. With that, I'm going to hand off to Sean.
Okay. So thanks, B-Man. So that was a quick overview of all the features that we've done for this last release. We also, let me turn off sharing for a second so we go back to video. We also fixed, I think it was around 150 bugs that went out with the May release. And before I take questions, I'm going to do that next. Grab over here so I can look at them all. I want to let you guys know that we took the whole month of May after we launched the last release and just stopped doing features and just fixed bugs. So I have my quality manager in the room too, but I believe we're going to have like 150 more bug fixes that we're just finishing that up this week, and then we'll likely be launching that in late June or early July. So also in terms of features, I saw a couple questions in regards to this. But let me see if I can just get to the questions first. Some folks were actually asking if we're going to ship this or that feature, so I thought I had that. Can one of you folks with the laptop stop over here so I can see all the different questions? I don't have it on my machine here. Thanks. Okay, so one of the questions was, why does GWG generate random names for element classes rather than using the layer name? So there's a lot of good reasons for that. Do you want to jump in on that one, Lucas?
Oh, sure, yeah. We get asked this a lot. The reason why we make the random names is because at the time when an element's created, we don't know what its use is for, so we can't assign a semantically meaningful name to it at that time. But you can always change the class names in the CSS panel. Okay.
Let's see. So how do I add the click tag with Google Web Designer? What we do via our enabler, like I thought we.
Just use tap area.
Oh, so yeah, that's obvious. Like the tap area would be the way to add your click tag. All right. Why GWB Lightbox ads not work in DFP properly when it's converted in DFP? So are you guys aware that they're not working properly, or we can look into that? I'm not sure. I don't think anybody knows, but we'll look into that. Let's see, well, can an ad that was created for AdWords be submitted in DoubleClick? So when you create a file in GWD, like you're either creating an AdWords file or a DoubleClick file, and there's slightly different enablers there for each one. So I mean, you could manually go in and change the enabler code in that individual file if you wanted to. That's one way to do it. It'd be pretty tricky to just have an automatic conversion process between those two. So what else do we have here? So can we create custom animations for a website? Sure. You absolutely could do that. You could just open a blank file. We have just create new HTML file, and the timeline would work just as it would otherwise, and you'll be generating CSS animations. Did I skip one?
No.
Let's see. Okay, so this is, I think, was one of the most upvoted ones. We'll be able to create cut and paste animations from one GWD file to another. So we've got a lot of requests around that, and the answer is yes. What we want to be able to do is be able to cut and paste from any document to another GWD document. There's a lot of complexity there, believe it or not. We thought it was going to be more of a straightforward task. It's actually not so straightforward. So actually, Jean-Pierre is going to work on that over the summer. We were going to have him do more text, but it looks like we're going to have him do copy-paste. It'll take a few months, and we'll have to stabilize it, so that is coming, not just the animations, but also just copying any content from one document to another. So can somebody give me like the actual questions on the website, so I'm not looking, somebody have that up for me? I thought I had it over here. I just want to look at like as they're coming in live, so I can see which ones are upvoted. Just put it over here for me, thanks. So I need to create a responsive banner or something I need to pay special attention to. So for a banner, anything, I mean, that you would think about when you're setting your media rules, Lucas, around responsive banners?
Yeah, there are definitely a number of best practices for it. I don't know if we have time to go into the full workflow in this venue, but one common way people start is they'll just make their complete advertisement at a size of interest to them. Could be a particular device, could be the largest possible size or the smallest possible size, but they get everything working. And then they switch to media rules, and then make all the adjustments necessary to hit their full range of target sizes. Another question that I'm seeing a couple times is how you actually get your responsive ads into DoubleClick, for example. So the studio is still working on their support for responsive documents, and as a result, if you create some kinds of files, like an interstitial, for example, then it will work when you upload it. But if you create a banner, they don't have a workflow yet where you can have one banner, a responsive banner, actually automatically served into several different slots. What you can do, however, is you can still create it in Web Designer and then just upload multiple versions, publish multiple versions of that same file to DoubleClick. And if you go to the publish dialog, there's a spot where you can just specify the size of the creative. And so it's not ideal, but it means if you want to have a document served in 15 slots, you have to publish it 15 different times. But you don't have to create 15 different files.
Cool. So lots of questions. I'm going to keep going. And some of these were done, I guess, before we started. So what are the notable differences between GWD and EdgeAnimate? I'm actually not the best person to ask because I said this last time, but I intentionally don't look at that product. And but I do know from what I've seen in some performance tests that because we're using hardware accelerated Translate XY for animations and a couple other things, our files are usually a little smaller and they are a little more performant. I think they have more of a JavaScript implementation for their animation that can be big and sometimes slower. So I haven't used the tool at all, the EdgeAnimate tool, so I'm not sure. I'm sure it's a great tool, but I'm not sure I'm the best guy to give you a full comparison. One thing I know is definitely true between those two is that we're very focused on advertising and creating the smallest, most performant and rich advertising. I think Edge maybe is more of a general tool with a lot of different options. I mean, you could certainly create anything you want in GWD, but we're definitely focused on advertising for right now. Did you fix all the bugs and all unreliable interfaces with a few things? Okay, so I think they're basically saying, did we fix all the bugs with the interface? I don't know if they mean with the old one or the new one. I know that this was a huge effort with like 5 engineers. We certainly fixed a lot of bugs before we let it go out, and there'll be a lot more improvements to the UI coming. Some of them may not be noticeable right away because some of them are architectural, but down the road you'll see a lot more different features with the user interface, and we're going to work really hard to make sure that we keep quality under control, both for that feature and the whole tool. Let's see. Can I make a responsive website easy with a Photoshop file? So I think that's a veiled way to ask, do you have a Photoshop importer that automatically distributes to layers, and then no. So I mean, I could be snarky about it and say, well, if you can export each layer of the Photoshop individually, import each individual image from that export, then sure. Let's see. Sometimes when I create the new dynamic ads, I cannot connect to the DoubleClick Studio account or for the schema. When using the templates, it seems to be broadly okay. What's the difference? Well, certainly the templates have been structured to work properly. So without seeing the specific file or what you're faced with, I'm not sure, feel free to contact GWD support with like the file, and we'll try to look into that specific issue. Let's see. Adobe proposes EdgeAnimate. That's in French, I think. I think that was translated for me yesterday. I'm not sure what that says in French. So let me move to the next one. I mainly use Adobe Edge from HTML5 animated banners. Now that is no longer supported, I'm going to start using Adobe Animate, but the sprite PNG it creates is so far large for advertising specs. Why should I make a switch? Because our contact, well, our tool is, again, puts out the smallest possible content that we could generate. The code is human readable. We're launching a new release like almost every 3 months. Those are pretty good reasons. I think the tool itself just keeps getting stronger and getting more capabilities. And certainly, if you're focused on advertising, I think Adobe Animate is that's what they renamed Flash to be, I think, and it's mostly Canvas and JavaScript. Certainly, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with JavaScript. But if you're looking for, a small file, which studies have shown, ads that load faster normally get more clicks and make more money. If that's the business you're in, you might want to make sure you've got the smallest possible and performant files. So that's one reason I would say to use GWD for advertising. Let's see. When producing animated banners, that must not weight 150K. Is initial load size compressed that counts? Okay, so the weight more than 50K. I think initial load compressed it counts, right? So I think the things that you can do lazy loading, we already have that built in through Publish. So it is that first compressed hit, yes. Producing, let's see. I tried GWD over a year ago and it was very buggy. Is the program more stable? I hope so. I mean, if we worked really hard in the last year, so I would hate to think that it's more buggy or has less features. We are still in beta, but moving very close to saying that we're not in beta. There's a couple of key features that I'd like to have in place. And yes, even do more for quality, but like I said, like we had the team fixing like about 150 bugs all through April. Then we launched, and then we fixed another 150 bugs. So I think a lot of the most egregious ones have been taken care of, and along with all these new capabilities. So I think it's worth giving another try, especially with the responsive workflow. That's one of my favorite features. That'd have been a really easy feature to mess up. So hats off to Lucas and the team that worked on that, because it's a really elegant workflow. And I think DoubleClick and AdWords, they're going to have really cool solutions down the road, like for responsive preview. Just the ability to maybe upload one creative and have it automatically figure out via metadata, how many sizes are targeted in that one creative. That's not there yet, and Lucas alluded to, uploading things multiple times to different targets, but that will be there. So I think it's definitely worth giving it a try. And certainly, I think the UI is fantastic now in comparison to the way it was before. Is it possible to change the trafficker in QA-approved design? I'm not sure on that one, to be honest. I think that's more of a DoubleClick Studio question. I don't think I have the answer to that one. What about selecting multiple frames, copying frames? So is that some of the things online for them, looking at Heather right now, for the timeline improvements we're thinking about?
We're definitely considering it.
Right. So we have a list of timeline improvements we want to do, and it won't be the last time we do the timeline. Just to be honest, when we did this user interface change, yes, it looks different. It's also completely different architecture. We changed everything over to Polymer. That was on sort of the proprietary JavaScript framework that wasn't ideal. And there's a few things left to still move over to the Polymer model, and the timeline is one of them. We might spend the summer actually focusing on porting that and getting it in a much more stable state before we start adding in a bunch of new functionality. But certainly copying, pasting frames. We have a long list of user feedback that we have collated, and we'll get to that right after we do the port for the timeline. So, but I think the short answer is yes. I can't promise it next week, but yes. Let's see. I think I might have gotten through most of these. But, let's see. Can I add my brand custom fonts in a GWD? So, Jasmine, weren't you mentioning that's the Font Locker project that you were talking about?
Yeah, we have some projects that we're, sorry, this is Jasmine. So we have some projects that we're working on for custom fonts and to just be able to add in brand fonts, which is a question I saw in the list as well. So it is something that we're working on, and we'll have more updates for that pretty soon.
Cool. Okay, so hypothetically, if you were given sizes such as, and they list a bunch of sizes, could we create one single responsive display creative? Well, yes. That's exactly what our responsive feature is designed to do for you, so yes. If you add your own code to the source while we're still working on the project, does that code get changed as the project is edited? So if I go over to code view, I add, like I'm calling a custom library, something of that nature, that we don't overwrite that code. It would be there, certainly. So yeah, you can go back and forth, and in fact, if you are in code view and you add something via code that would normally render, and when you go back to design view, you're going to see that. So it's kind of cool because it's a real designer developer workflow. You can just flip right back and forth. Now, I guess if you write totally contradictory code to what's already written, that could be a problem in any project, not just GWD. But in general, yeah, it'll be there. Will there be an option to use masks? Okay. So yes, the guy that did responsive, Lucas, he's going to work on masking over the summer, and we have a couple of engineers working on that. I don't know how long it's going to take yet because we haven't actually built the schedule, but we do know how we're thinking about doing it. I'd love to get more feedback from you guys. We're talking about masking that'll work across every browser, every single browser. You have kind of a limited amount of options. Basically using overflow hidden, not being able to use complex geometry for the mask. But other than that, you should be able to have a mask-maskee relationship with multiple maskees, animate the maskees. That's probably in the realm of possibility. Hopefully that's going to be enough to be useful for folks. But if you want to go beyond that, you're looking at things like Canvas, and we'd like to see how far we can get with CSS before we try those solutions. Will our media buyer determine if a display creative is responsive, or can we get the file up as responsive? So I think that I'm not really sure who makes that call, the media buyer. And I know we can offer the content. Whoever wants to make the decision that content should be offered on your side, I'm sure that, yeah, I don't think the guy that creates the tool is the one that has that answer. If you want to send to GW support, though, we can route that to the right folks that would maybe help answer that. How do we add custom fonts? So that was you want to jump here? How do we add custom fonts? It's kind of the same answer?
Yeah, it's essentially the same. So it's something that we are working on. I've actually been working with John Pierre on some of the testing for it. So we're actively working on it, and we work along with the Google Fonts team to also investigate and see the best way and the fastest way to get those fonts in. So we are working on it.
GVD has automatic enabler integration, or should we do it manually to make it work? Well, no. I mean, like if you want to create a double-click file and that's going to have the enabler built in, it's going to work perfectly. You could actually go File, New, HTML file, and then manually put in all the enabler stuff if you wanted to. I don't know why you do that, because it's right there for you, but you certainly could do that. Let's see. Can I set the image to be responsive width, which will scale accordingly based on the banner width? So if you do 100% by 100%, yes, you can do that. The responsive feature seems really cool. Can you share any links? Can you share any links that are differently from Breakpoint? So Lucas does a really in-depth YouTube video. I don't know, is there a way we can get that somewhere?
We'll add it to the FAQ when we answer everything and we publish that. So we have 3 videos, and it goes from sort of basic to advanced. So we definitely have you covered there.
Yeah, those videos are great. There's also documentation help on that. So go to our normal YouTube page. We'll also make sure it's on the FAQ to highlight the responsive one, because I mean, there's a lot to kind of get your head around. But the first time you build a responsive app, if you watch the videos, go through it one time, it's actually not hard. It's just a lot of new things to learn, like in a couple of minutes. But it's pretty powerful. Let's see. Whenever I adjust the properties of a keyframe, it applies the property across all the keyframes within the timeline of a layer. Is there a way to change just the property for one keyframe?
Well, so it will adjust when you first add the property. It will add it to all keyframes, but when you change it after it's already been added, it should only adjust in the keyframe that's selected.
So I'm not sure if you guys. So basically, if you add the property to, it goes to all keyframes initially, and then you can select individual keyframes to change properties one by one. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I think this is
but this is also something that we're looking at as well.
I'm not sure if I can hear you. So that there's more to do there, basically, right?
Yeah.
And we are looking into that. Let's see. Let's skip that. I think you guys should just update but publish a new ebook for GWD, seeing that it's changed so much. Oh, that's right. There was a guy that
someone wrote a specific ebook, but we keep our help center updated for all of our changes. So
just go to the help center. That's where all the most current information is. The guy that wrote that ebook, that was a long time ago. I don't even know what that thing said. It's probably very out of date, but it wasn't like an official Google thing. It was just gentleman did it. I think it was great for the time. It's probably very outdated at this point. What's the best way to add a click text? I think we already did that one. Option upload backup images within the. Is there an option to upload a backup image to Studio within the Google Web Center? So no, that has to be done in Studio right now. That's something we could think about doing in the published dialog. We could add in just automatically. It wouldn't be a big deal to add that, but today it's not there. I think that's most of these, right? I think I've gotten all these. Is there a way to optimize file sizes? So we do minify as part of the publish process. So we get the JavaScript as small as it can and the HTML. And certainly, if you're asking, do we have image compression built into the tool? No. There's a lot of great image compression tools out there. You have to use one of those for now. And plus, like everyone always has their favorite image compression tool. Doesn't matter what we do. Like, oh, but if I do it with Fireworks, it's like this. If I do it with such and such, but it doesn't mean we won't ever do that. But it's not in there today. Is it possible to make a div in a free shape like a mask? So I mean, today there's no built-in masking support. You certainly could use overflow hidden in certain ways. Go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, so what that question might be asking about is whether or not we support ClipPath. We have looked into it. The problem is that ClipPath isn't supported in Internet Explorer, which is one of the browsers that we do target, and it's not even on their timetable for maybe later on introducing support for it. So if we had that, then you could effectively have a div with an arbitrary shape for masking purposes, but we're not considering it right now just because of our commitment to cross-browser compatibility.
Right, that's the thing. It's like, if we make something that works on 80% of browsers, and then the whole point is to make ads that can run everywhere. It's just not good enough, right? Like if you tell your clients like, well, my ad that I made for you will work on 70% of browsers, that's not going to be good enough, right? Like that needs to work everywhere, which unfortunately limits what we can really adopt and support. Let's see, I just saw one I wanted to answer there. Oh, is it possible to export creative from GW to non-Google ad servers? And if so, how do you minimize file size, IAB, strict limits? So there's actually if you go new file, there's a generic ad type that you can pick that has all the same features as anything you would make for DoubleClick or AdWords. It also can be minified. So it can be as small as any other GW ad that we create for our own platforms, pretty much. So that is open. So how do you get to DoubleClick Studio? All I ever get is a page that says contact sales, which I have done twice now and yet to hear back.
Yeah, so I actually asked the doc writer for that Studio Help Center to correct some of that language because it was a little tricky to kind of figure out how to get to it. So that's been corrected already, and I'll add that into the FAQ that lists exactly the path and the link to get to that. And then we can just, we can figure it out in the forum if you're still not hearing back.
Okay. And for this next one, I've created an expandable banner. Denied DoubleClick Studio for having an enabler. Is this due to the fact that DoubleClick environment when creating the blank file? That makes no sense, actually. So that's crazy. If so, is there a way to change the environment existing file? Can you please contact us to go ahead?
So we don't have the UI for that.
Right.
We do have instructions on how to do it in code view.
Can you put that in the FAQ?
Yeah.
So we'll put the instructions in the FAQ on how to do that. Can you speak clearer? I can try.
Well, it was earlier, so
Okay.
it might not have been you.
All right. Will there be an option to have a find and replace function in the code view screen? So VMan, like I know you're thinking about doing code completion, the ability to jump, like if you're in design view and you have an element selected and you go to code view, then jumping right to that part of the code. We do have find and replace in some form, maybe.
It should already be there in the edit, through the edit option on the menu. There's a control.
Yeah, if you go edit, when you're in code view, it should be find and replace right there.
Yes.
Maybe it needs to be more discoverable. I don't know.
Probably.
Okay. Let's see. Can we get an infinite scroller, please? In terms of a component, I guess they're suggesting. It's a good idea. Is it possible to add a font from my computer? Okay, so yeah, they should just be, all system fonts should list up when you load, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can we add a link in the image button component as well as make it change color or roll over? Well, I mean, I guess you could put the tap area on top of it, or is there no way to actually select the component?
We
Just
can use events for that. We put it in the FAQ.
right. So we'll put that in the FAQ too. Just basically, the best way to do that is to use events. On timeline for pause event does not work properly in Safari. We're aware of that one, I think, right?
I believe it's a browser issue with Safari. So
Okay, so I think we're aware of that one. It's a browser issue with Safari. I don't think we have a workaround right now.
no.
That maybe we can look at that again, but right now we don't have a workaround. Let's see. Will responsive ads work in every browser? I mean, I don't think we've done anything that's proprietary. It should work in every browser. So yes. Can we create customized? Okay, so I think I'm now going through the ones I read off the thing earlier. So this one here, GW support recommends to use Rich Media Gallery template, but the templates are outdated, still Flash. All the GWD H5 templates that are there, obviously HTML5. Maybe we need to do a better job of providing the right link to where that goes, so we can look into that on the FAQ as well. Can we use custom JavaScript and JavaScript libraries in GWD? Yes. Just call them via code view. Is it possible to drag and drop within GWD, or do we have to use external JS scripts and libraries to achieve this? Possible drag and drop within GWD. You mean just dragging? You mean dragging I'm not sure what you mean. Dragging a JS file, dragging. I'm going to skip that one. And let's see what else we got here. Is it possible you could provide an option to load GWD classes from a CDN rather than loading them from published files? That way publishers don't complain about their sizes. It's possible. It's a good idea. I think we've talked about things like that. I won't commit to it right now, but that's something that we've discussed. And I definitely read that one already about the Adobe Edge banners. I think I've hit them all now. Let me just go back up to the top, make sure that, why isn't this scrolling? There we go. We had that. Oh, how long will it take until the ad infrastructure will be compatible with responsive design? So I don't want to speak for the core server teams. I think that would be a mistake. I know they're working on it now, and they have pretty aggressive targets, and I'll have to leave it at that. And I think it'll roll out probably in chunks. Like you might see responsive preview first, you could imagine, and then see maybe a more elegant workflow for how they deal with the upload of responsive creative and how they deal with the metadata to have all the right formats and targets. So, but I don't want to commit to like what their schedules are because I don't exactly know. So I wanted to just mention too, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to mention some other big things that we're thinking about doing. Definitely masking is coming, as I mentioned. There's going to be a bunch more UI changes, improvements to the timeline, probably like floating panels, being able to dock on all sides, top, bottom, left. Save your own panel sets, that's coming. There'll definitely be a lot more work on the code environment. We want to make sure that, I mean, look, like all of you guys that are more on the developer side, you have your favorite code editors. We're not going to stop you from using that. We don't think we should. But like if you need to use GWD and you need to go into code view, we want it to be as good of an experience as we can possibly make it for you. I think that trying to play catch up with all the best editors out there isn't what we want to do. But we want to have a respectable experience. So you're going to see more work in that area for sure. Copy paste between documents needs to happen, as I mentioned earlier. It's going to happen. We're going to work on it over the summer. And so I don't know when we'll launch that, but like it's going to happen soon. In terms of other big things, like maybe farther down the road, there's a lot of things around animation in terms of being able to have, animating on a path, for example, is having a guide layer, and just guides in general, so you can mark things. That's something that we want to try to do. So we're going to continue to focus on dynamic and making that workflow better, as well as new components. If you have feature requests, all of us definitely are reading the forums for Google Web Designer, and we're seeing that, and we're tabulating what the top requests are, so feel free to give us any feedback anytime. And new ones come in. Is there going to be support for looping, infinite gallery? Yeah, you're right. So that's one of the biggest requests, you're right. So we'll try to work on that one in particular. San, can you make sure we make a note of that one? Actually, San, our quality manager, is asking me about that like once a week. So we will try to do that over the summer. That's pretty much just one change to one component, so we can try to do that. Anything else? Oh wait, so does TV perhaps plan to switch to GreenSock as the internal animation framework? No, we don't. Not that we would stop you from like loading it as a library, but we're basing our entire animation model on CSS. We think that's a good strategy. It's the best way to deliver things fast and small across every browser. So not that, I mean, GreenSock is great, and if you want to use it, you can totally bring it in, but I don't think you're going to see a future where our timeline is based on JavaScript. It's going to continue to be based on CSS. That's the plan right now. I think I've covered most of this, or there's some of these sort of duplicate questions. Why do SVG assets get blurry when scaled in an animation? You want to talk to that? But I mean, it's basically still a rastered asset, is why. But
yeah, that is a little confusing. The most likely the reason why you're seeing it blurry is because the default behavior of Web Designer is that when you change the size of an element as part of an animation, it uses the scale channels of the transform as opposed to setting width and height. But just the way that the browser spec works, when you apply scale, it scales the element as if it were an image. So it'll essentially take a snapshot of your SVG and then scale that. That's why it gets pixelated when you scale it up. If you were to instead animate width and height, you wouldn't see that. The SVG would not be pixelated. But then you have other problems.
Right.
Namely, what would happen is that the animation performance would drop, and you'd get these kind of like jagged, bumpy effects if you have like slow animations. We talked this previously in the previous release with our changes to the animation model. But basically, if your choice is between animating width and height, which essentially never works, or animating scale, which has this problem where if you make it larger, then you get pixelation. What I would suggest instead is that whenever the largest size is going to be, you make that be the size of the element, and then scale it down from there.
So maybe we could sample things based on scale in the future. We could re-render things and
we're limited by what the browser supports. If you set the scale to 2 on any element, it's going to get pixelated. So the best thing to do is to make things be as large as possible, and then have your scale animations always scale down, or at least be less than 1.
Okay, cool. Any plans for an in-banner float section in GWD? In-banner float section in GWD.
Selection.
Oh, selection. Sorry. We haven't thought about that one, but we can think about it. 3D animation doesn't work well in Safari. Animations are not smooth. So if you're using Transit XY, that's odd. We did tests with like 60 objects on stage, all animate at the same time. We did it in Safari as well, I believe, and it was like 60 frames a second. You know, it was fast. So if you have specific files, please send them to GW support, and we'll definitely look at them and put them through profiles. Make some noise with the call. Okay, this time, last time I said I'd do that and I forgot, so I'm just going to do that real quick so I don't forget to hit the gong. Sorry. Last time I forgot. Is there any other questions? Last ones? I think that's.
Yeah,
This one on
looping.
have we fixed the bug that adds redundant exit events? We did.
Where's that at? Oh, have you fixed the bug that adds redundant exit events? Yes, that was fixed. All right.
It should be in the current release.
Yeah, it's in the current release. It's already out there. So I think that's what we're going to be able to answer today. Thanks so much, guys. I love this HOA. You guys are so active, and we appreciate your support. And we're going to continue to make new features, make the quality better, and just try to find new ways to empower you to make great advertising content. And I know there's a couple things that have been on request for a while. We haven't forgot about them, and we will get to them, and some of them very soon. So again, please keep active on GW support, keep us honest, and remind us of the things that you really think are important, because definitely the customer feedback drives a lot of what we do. So with that, though, I'll just say thanks so much. Thanks for showing up today, and we'll see you next time. Next time we launch, we'll do another one just like this. So thank you so much. See ya.